then the next thing that caught my attention was Simon Conway Morris, a paleontologist at Cambridge University, also argues that science and religion are compatible. Conway Morris emphasizes that developments happen as a result of pre-existing conditions, such as the need for blood cells to have hemoglobin in order to transport oxygen. Evolution, therefore, works only because it plays out within a certain set of rules.
What does that have to do with science and religion being compatible?
If that is confusing, it should be. Let's see. He says evolution isn't accidental, as one might suspect. And I don't know who suspects it's accidental. But in his opinion, if evolution began all over again, human intelligence would develop pretty much the same way as it has. It goes on like this in the paragraph. And this is disturbing to me. And I actually did a blog post at the AE blog talking about a conversation I had with a gentleman who's a naturalist in a lot of ways, but surprisingly has believes in God, and he talks a lot about nature, and he understands nature, and he does hybrid plants, and he does all these things using nature, and yet in his when you talk to him, he'll come out and say, how can you see this and not believe in God? And I'm thinking, how can you see it and not believe in nature? And when this is what I had to say about that. Rules that exist in the natural world, when it says, because it plays out within a certain set of rules in that paragraph, I'm saying those are rules that exist in the natural world.
Yeah.
Nature appears to have parameters. Why then wouldn't someone believe what they see, that nature can have parameters? To say a God must set those parameters is no different than looking at the parameters of nature and claiming they're impossible. That's exactly what you're doing. You're looking at the way nature works. You're looking at an acorn grow into an oak tree, and you're saying, that's impossible. That cannot happen.
Unless there is some
supernature must do it, because nature can't do that. And I'm saying, I look at nature do it, and I say, well, nature just did it, and you saw it do it. And you're sitting here telling me that it can't? I don't understand that.
This falls into the category, and he's talking about how science and religion are compatible. I think that is another weasel word there. In my view, they're not compatible. It is possible for an individual, and Francis Collins comes up because we talked about him recently, and I think it's a good example of that, to accept the findings of science, the rigors of scientific principles, the process to work as a scientist, and then in addition to all of that, have some God belief where that they've glommed on as an extra entity or transcendent, or I'm sticking it in these holes. And it's possible for them to do that, provided that this God never gets in the way of the expansion of knowledge of what we're going to learn from the rigors of science. And in that sense, it is possible for an individual to simultaneously hold two beliefs because they have a rationalization mechanism that doesn't make them contradictory. Because their views of God are what I termed with Francis Collins, science plus. And the specific aspects of what they believe and are claiming with regard to God transcend what we currently understand with science. I don't think they all do it very well. I think that what we find is that by and large, you're going to come in conflict at some point. And which one wins out, the science aspect of your mind or the God aspect of your mind, it kind of tells us a lot about who you are, etc., and what you really are willing to accept. But the idea that they're compatible is one that I think is it's a word trick. They're not compatible in any sense other than if there is a God, it should be demonstrable using. When I say using the rigors of science, I don't mean that we could put God in a beaker. I'm saying that the methodology that we use to determine whether anything else exists should apply to anything that exists, including your God or whatever supernatural thing you happen to actually believe in. And so I think they are in conflict. I also don't buy into the non-overlapping magisteria that tries to separate them, and I definitely don't buy into this idea that one answers how questions and the other answers why questions. That to me is one of the most asinine word games anybody has ever played. We're both are attempting to answer questions about what is, and whether you phrase that as a how or a why or a what or a where or a who doesn't matter. Give me an example of a how question or a why question that you think is explicitly within the domain of science or religion, and I'll rephrase that question and put it promptly in the category of the other one. It's insane that we do this. Oh, science tells us how, but religion tells us why. No, it doesn't. Religion asserts meaning onto the explanations.
The thing is, you either have something that's manifesting or you don't.
Yeah.
And if it manifests, you have something to examine. And if it's not manifesting, you have nothing.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know how else to describe that. There's either nothing there or there's something there. If there's something there, then you can examine it. And if you have nothing to examine, that's nothing. I don't know why that's hard.
I don't either.
Okay, so then let's see. We had Peter Hess, I guess, the Faith Project Director at the National Center for Science Education in Oakland, California, also says that scientific inquiry and religious belief are not mutually exclusive.
Now that phrasing, I think I just agreed with.
He says
scientific inquiry and religious belief are not mutually exclusive. And I would accept that because I know people, and like Francis Collins, who have scientific belief or an application of scientific inquiry and exercise it and have religious belief. I just think that it's the position of here's all the things that we know, and I'm going to keep God out here in the unknown area. And then as the things we know increase, that unknown gets smaller, and the areas to plug your God in get erased.
This reminds me. Just came to me while I was dropping my pen. While I was doing this, while you were talking about the different realms of science and religion and the idea that they're not different, I remembered a professor who wrote to us on the atheist list, on the TV list, and wrote about a student of his. He was teaching in the sciences, and she found that the teachings were incompatible with her religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And she was having a struggle with that, and ultimately she withdrew from the program. That was her response, to say, I have to stick with my religion, and so I refuse to learn any more about this.
And that's not the only case of that happening. If you listen to like Kent Hovind's lectures and other people, it's gone. There's a monster in the couch that eats pens and coins, small coins.
I'm scared.
But there were examples of people who, I'm in the field of geology, for example, and when there's a mountain of evidence that is overwhelming to show the age of the Earth is much greater than these 6,000 to 10,000 years that the individual's particular religious beliefs claim, they've dropped the program. And there was one guy who actually attained a doctorate in geology, or was a doctoral candidate in geology, despite being a young Earth creationist. And the reason that he went ahead and went through with it was so that now young Earth creationists would have a PhD geologist that they could reference, even though, when he's actually working, if that's the right word, for the creationists, anything he says is no longer science. It no longer has anything to do with what he, learned and studied during his geology courses. It's like, saying I'm going to get an economics degree so that I can, run a better pyramid scheme.
Well, it's like John Mack advocating for the UFO abductees. Yeah. They get a Harvard professor. So.
But that's the thing, is that we don't necessarily tally up. The neither the number of people believe a thing nor the strength of their conviction has anything to do with whether or not what they believe is true.